a bit of an impromptu video here, which was inspired by a question, thank you Steve, the question was, is it my higher self or my guardian angel? In short, my reply to that is it's both. But I felt I need to explain that more fully in a video. So I feel we need to look at there's a few observations I wish to make. I'd also like to say a big thank you to Peg Divergent for putting a community post with a video from a channel called the Alchemist. Now I've watched the 3 most recent videos and it doesn't conflict, it just adds to the knowledge of the understanding of the inner standing of how everything is, and an emerging pattern from it. That pattern is in the numbers. One of these videos talks about the 8th Hermetic seal. I'm sure many of you are familiar in terms of revelations about the 7 seals, and there's also, it references 7 chakras. But then now we're talking about beyond 7 to 8. There's a pattern that emerges, and hopefully it will become clear as I talk more in this video. This is a little bit all over the place. It's like, wow, can we not tell that we are in Mercury retrograde? So this is probably, I think this is about attempt number 5, and I've scrapped the previous 4 because it's just not flowing right. But it's like, look, where can I turn for the answer to this? Immediately, I turn to Bruckner's 6th Symphony. It is nicknamed the Philosopher. It is very much about one of, am I doing the right thing? Do I continue walking my path? Do I keep taking that step into the unknown? And the story or the history with this symphony, it led from the 6th to Bruckner's 7th Symphony, which was the one that brought him notoriety and fame towards the end of his life. It put him on the map as a great composer, recognition within his lifetime after nearly 60 years. So it's around his second Saturn return as well. So that symphony, the one I knew least, the 6th Symphony of Bruckner, has really come to the fore as an inspiration from what I hear in that music. So you've got the 6 to 7, I've already just given you the 7 to the 8. So let's look at some other patterns with numbers and things, the consecutive numbers. So using what Rudolf Steiner explains about the evolution of humanity, it starts with the Saturn impulse, which brought warmth. This was followed by the Sun impulse, which gave us light, which led to the Moon influence or impulse, which gave us water, which led to the Earth impulse, which gave us everything that makes up the Earth, the minerals, the soil, the whole lot, the material, the physical. That in itself is a step, but notice you have this development of humanity from the Saturn to the Earth. There's 4, but you have 5 senses. Humanity is going through an evolution, and I'll go with the Rudolf Steiner explanation that we're moving into the Jupiter age. It's all about expansion. So that would be the 5th age or 5th impulse, to which you would then have 6 senses. So again, you have another consecutive numbering here. So you've gone 5, 6, you've also gone 4, 5, and I've given you 6 to 7 and 7 to 8. Now the other interesting thing with numbers, when we are trying to perceive the supersensible realms, we can use the Plato's cave analogy, where you're fixed looking from a two-dimensional perspective at shadows. And then it may occur, and you can begin to penetrate that there is another dimension beyond the shadows that only give you two dimensions. Similarly, when we're in this realm that we would perceive as three dimensions, although there's actually four, one is not readily apparent as such. Lost my train of thought. But by observing one dimension less gives us a clue as to how we can look to perceive the next dimension beyond what the five senses can penetrate in the spiritual realm, in the higher hierarchy realm. So let's look at the position of man in this. So in the lowest, the most solid is the mineral kingdom. So there's your first, that's the base, that's the solid base. So that would go with your root chakra. It would also go with the Saturn principle, which is often associated with Satan and low vibration. You then move to the sun principle, the generative impulse that gives life to everything in nature. So that goes with the sacral. And of course the place of the sun is actually also the place of the moon, which gives the water, the fluidity, which in turn leads to the earth, the physical, which is in line with the fourth chakra, the heart chakra, hence heart and earth are an anagram of each other. Then we're moving into what Rudolf Steiner calls the supersensible realms, so that would be 5, 6 and 7, going with the chakra system, the communication which would be represented by the angeloi or the angels. Then you come to the mind's eye. Now that's the higher hierarchies in the form of the archangeloi or the archangels. And then beyond that is the time spirits, which would go with the 7th chakra. But then there's more above those as well. It's reflected in the material world with a system of pretty much every business. You'll have the president or the head of the company. Then you'll have a board of directors. It's delegated downwards. So likewise with the going from the archai to the archangeloi to the angeloi to the human. And also, to use another Rudolf Steiner explanation, how the soul actually takes an active part in the creation of the physical body. Seeds of thought, you could say. Which I want to make a little sidestep here. And it comes from the video on the Alchemist channel about the origins of narcissism. It's interesting, there is a plant or a flower called a narcissus or a narcissi. But it's also a huge clue if you consider what is the definition of narcissism. Controlling those around you is a definition of it. But what do we do when we put this in the perspective of growing? Excuse me. There has to be a destruction. For example, if you look behind there, you'll see the sort of natural growing, and then where I've made rock retaining walls, I've now stepped in as an intermediary because I wish to control to a certain degree some of the environment and then put in seeds for tomatoes in that particular case, or bell peppers, things that like a lot of sun. So to some degree you are controlling the environment around you, but it is done in a co-creating way rather than a self-serving or destructive way. But of course there is a balance to this, because it is partly self-serving, because it will be growing food for this avatar, but also growing for more than this avatar. So it's from a benevolent principle. It comes back to another video on the Alchemist channel about the 8th Hermetic seal being care. Now, it just comes to words. I mean, if we break the word care down, it's C and R. It is, without making judgment on it. But I could substitute the word care for interest and use the Rudolf Steiner explanation. There has to be an interest as a basis for there to be love. You focus on what you're interested in. Now, but coming back, I've said before there's a pattern that things are played out in the metaphysical and then are taken literally and played out in the material. So if we look at the transgender agenda, for example, the simplest message that is being shown there is all is not as it would first appear. You have to look deeper. You have to look deeper within to see the truth. To me, that is all that is being explained there, but it is taking something literally. You plant seeds and you sow seeds. You, as within, so without. The A is the alpha, the first, and the S in the word as is spirit. As within, so you're reflecting outward what you're doing within. You're growing, you're cultivating. I'm speaking here on a personal perspective as much as anything else with the growing food in this community. But the sowing, and the sowing of seeds, that's the divine masculine principle, the taking action, the going outward. And even on this ground, you're going out from a building and you're co-creating with nature, you're planting seeds. But then there is the material. What gives birth to it is nature. You're co-creating. That's the divine feminine principle, but you're not controlling exactly the growth of those seeds. You're basically geographically placing the seeds, but it is a co-creation with nature. It is not trying to be in total control of it. There will obviously have to be a destruction before there can be growth, because you have to prepare the growing bed. Then, of course, when that seed has grown and produced the fruit, be it tomatoes or whatever, you become the harvester, you become the reaper. You reap what you sow, taken in a positive and natural way. But it's that interplay of the Mater principle, the divine feminine, which is the growth, the giving birth to. But then you have the seed, which can be the idea, or it can be the physical seeds. And that is the male principle, and then it becomes manifest. And thank you to the Alchemist for breaking down that word, or the first part, that the man, the divine masculine principle, is the manifestation of things in this physical realm. But it is co-creation with the birth from Mother Earth in this context. There's so much I want to say on this video, and trying to condense it and to keep it into some sort of order. Please bear with me. So to answer that question of is it your higher self or is it your guardian angel? See, I can't remember if I've already said this or if it was in a previous recording which I've subsequently scrapped because it wasn't flowing right. So apologies if I already said this bit. So to use a Rudolf Steiner analogy, you take part, your soul takes part in the creation of the physical body by bringing two physical beings together to create In the same way that you're planting seeds with earth, this is done in a metaphysical sense, but then plays out in the physical, and here you are in a physical body. That physical body is the end result, the material physicality. Now let's look at the supersensual realm. You've got the angels, the archangels, and the archi. Notice archi. They are the time spirits. To use the Rudolf Steiner analogy again. So they're like number 7. So to penetrate that spiritual realm, we have a beauty by being in this mid-placing, in the 4th chakra of the earth, or the heart realm of material, the 4th impulse that's created the 4th element. Oh, this gets difficult to put into words. Hold on, let me just regain my thoughts. And we're back. So yes, we're in this midpoint. The constant theme is about balance, finding the balance between the divine masculine and the divine feminine, not taking it literally and materializing it into physicality, because it's all an inside job. It is all within, but you can reflect it out externally, and you can put it into ways like working with nature, co-creating. It doesn't have to necessarily be a bad thing. But we have this beautiful advantage in this physical realm. Just look around you. You've got contrast. By comparing things, we can find answers. We can penetrate that supersensible realm. We can unlock doors within ourselves when we go the opposite direction. The Plato's cave analogy is a perfect one for this, where you step back from 3 dimensions to 2 and observe, and you're observing shadows, and you can only perceive 2 dimensions, but it will occur to you that there's something else going on. There's another dimension beyond that, which in this 3-dimensional form we readily accept. But there is another one. We're actually in 4 dimensions, which come from that 7th realm, that archi realm, and that is time. They are the time spirits. So over periods of time, you'll see changes, but in the actual moment, you won't see the change. Just consider how quick seeds will grow, and how they produce those first little shoots, and then start sprouting leaves, or for a longer time span, take that tree for example. Same with humans, same with the animal kingdom, same with the plant kingdom. The mineral kingdom is on a very slow time scale, but likewise the time scales, we're at the center point of this, because as the way Rudolf Steiner explains it, the archi, the time spirits, have what we would perceive a very slow time period. So he says the last change in a time spirit, I think it was 1600. So the end of the Dark Ages. You've got and then you've got different archangels within those time spirit periods, and then you've got the angels below that. Interestingly, the archi. Perhaps we can hear in that the archon and the AI that comes out of that at that level. So consider also, this is again from Rudolf Steiner, how does a dog perceive a human, for example? What is the dog's canine perception of Earth? Look how it interacts very differently. Its perception of this physical realm is very different. And then if you move further down the animal kingdom, where you come to something like the snail, the things that are closest in contact with the ground, their perception and their interaction is very different. In the event of some sort of disaster, a good indicator will be the behaviour of birds. They will all suddenly fly away because their perception of Earth is very different from a human. But humans are older. This is the weird thing about it, but not in the form we know now. Again, I'm going to put the link to the relevant Rudolf Steiner lecture from 1915 about this. It's worth hearing. And I also put the link to the Alchemist channel. And thank you, Peg Divergent, for hosting that. That's fantastic. But what also emerges out of all of this is the interrelation of numbers. So we're in the fourth element in the evolution of Earth, which is going into its fifth. We're in the start of that transition. You can tell, I feel that it's a big one just from feeling, but when you consider Mercury retrograde, eclipse season, the solar eclipse, and the equinox all at the same time, that alone should really be an indicator that there are going to be huge significant changes which will play out in this physical reality in one form or another. What you perceive and whether you perceive it as negative or positive is down to you and how you feel inside. I would hope that if you have any doubts or fears, then come and talk to me. I'll give you a different perspective. I think it's fair to say, if you listen to this channel, that my perspective on things is not the run of the mill, shall we say. But that again is due to the individual circumstances that this avatar has, and I'm player number 6, as it were. I'm walking number 6. I mean, do come and talk to me if you want to know more about that. I could do another video if so wished. So yes, your guardian angel and your higher self are one and the same in one sense, but not in the other, because ultimately it's all connected to one. But as we have moved into this earth element and this physical realm, things have been compartmentalized and separated, so we see all these different colors. Again, I refer you to the Alchemist channel, talking about what comes after death, whether you go into the light or not, and that is worth hearing. Consider also, and this is something just before making this video, it's like I've got this rosemary bush here. Hopefully you can see it there. How does that perceive me, as opposed to how I perceive it? Because there are no physical eyes with the plant kingdom. It's all in feeling, it's all in their root system, their communication. There's your real origin of World Wide Web and Wi-Fi and so on. It's a natural communication network that's right below our feet. So hopefully that has answered the question, given a little bit more information. I can't help but appreciate the beauty in the timing, because the Rudolf Steiner that I'm going to link to, I only listened to last night. It's one I've heard before, but I thought, let's hear it again. It's worth hearing again, because you're impressing upon yourself. And I feel with Rudolf Steiner that I can trust a lot of what he says, because it has been self-proving in the way I've described it before. It's as if he had a telescope looking 100 years ahead and accurately predicting events that are being played out in this external realm. It makes perfect sense. It's so easy to fall for the assumption that things have never changed, but clearly things are always in constant motion. So why would it be that humanity today is the same as the humanity of, say, the Greek period? So, for example, and to paraphrase Rudolf Steiner, Plato would never have said, "I have an idea." He would say something more on the lines of, "An idea has come through me." There wasn't the same development of the ego back then. The perception of things was very different. I mean, if you want to see a demonstration of things are always changing, just look around you, but consider also coastlines, how they change. One coast may erode, another one may be built up by deposits, by the motions of the sea. So everything is in constant change, everything is in different time scales. So our relation from our perception of time with the angeli, the archangeli and the archai, the different time realms and over different periods of time, but they are all interrelated. Nothing is not connected in one form or another, whether you perceive it or not, whether you feel it or not. But these number sequences as well, there's an interesting further comparison that can be made here. So when I think of Sonia, the Tree of Knowledge channel, saying how we've gone from third quadrant to fourth quadrant, it's the only transition you can make that does not require death in the middle, because it has just happened. So many that you see out there are copies of ones that have got stuck in the third dimension. Likewise, as Rudolf Steiner explains, some of these higher hierarchies didn't develop. He calls them retarded spirits. So some of the archangels, as it were, that were going through the equivalent of their human development got stuck there. It's reflected also with examinations and things, say at school. Only a certain number will pass, some will fail. They get stuck at a certain level. And you'll find this with abilities and things, gifts, where we may excel at a particular thing, but another person may not be so gifted in that way. Of course, it's all subjective when it comes to art, or whether something is good or not. But with art in particular, this has gone off on a tangent. Art in particular is subjective, and it would come down to what you feel is good or what you feel is bad. But if you can perceive beyond that to the intent that is worked through the artist, it reveals another picture. That's something worth doing. This is all about, this is going in some ways with the divine masculine principle. It's penetration. The seed is trying to penetrate the egg, as it were, the cosmic egg in this case. We're trying to perceive into the hierarchy dimensions, which is, it is totally possible to do. And like I said, we're in that perfect balance place in this material realm. By looking the one way to then see a key and a pattern to find what's on the other side, it works in exactly the same way. This has just occurred to me. With these isometric markers and looking at events that have occurred a certain number of years before to a very similar event that then occurs. And this is something that Jason has just shown on our KX channel with these solar eclipses. The one in South America is the isometric marker to the exact number of days, to the 2017, to what is coming in the next couple of weeks. it is staggering how much confirmation comes through, and the beauty and the timing in the way things come through. And I'm just filled with gratitude, really, that we have this luxury of being able to see things when we consider time, how we can cross-compare one thing against another and find things, how we can also cross-compare and look from a lesser perception, which then opens up the next perception. And it follows the same pattern as the Saturn impulse with the Earth at that stage, as it were, or humanity at that stage of its development, to become the Sun, go through the Sun impulse. It has to recapitulate back to the Saturn impulse first, and likewise for the Moon element, the Moon impulse, to bring water, the water element, that had to recapitulate back to the Sun. So it follows that same principle, and it comes down to something else that is reflected in everyday life that you can all relate to when you think about as being a pedestrian. How would you cross a road? You look one way, you look the other in which to cross and carry on your journey. The journey, in the sense I'm talking about, although I'm using that analogy, is your spiritual journey, your